What are the factors robbing Australia of its original Anzac spirit demonstrated in World War I, and why is it important to nurture this spirit through generations? The term Anzac spirit was suggested by an official war historian, C.E.W. Bean, to have stood and still stand for reckless valor in a good cause, for endeavor, resourcefulness, fidelity, comradeship, and endurance that will never own defeat. It also encompasses the laughter, the pride, and the love of life that is in every Australian. To really understand the spirit, one must delve back into the country's past. After writing an entry essay about a South Australian World War I veteran for the Premier's Anzac Spirit School Prize and attending an interview, I was chosen along with 5 other students from South Australia to visit the memorials and war sites on the Western Front. The soldier I had done research on was Oscar Leonard Godley, an Adelaide-born World War I medical worker in the Australian Field Ambulance who served in France during 1916 and 1917. He was the 4th son of Arthur John Godley and Eliza Godley, who lived in Prospect. Oscar received his high school education at Adelaide High School and was interested in pursuing a career in the medical field. He was even qualified to take up a course at Adelaide University. Instead, he enlisted with the AIF in December 1915. He arrived in France on board the HMATA 70 Ballarat on the 21st of November 1916. After a few years in training, he was ready for combat. Along with the other members of the 9th Fielder Ambulance, Oscar camped near the medical dressing station in Pont de Achelles in early May 1917. Unfortunately, on the very first day of the Battle of Messines, he was wounded in action. Although uncertain, the most likely cause of his wounds were injuries sustained when collecting the wounded from the frontline battles near Messines, injuries caused by infantry bombs intended for the attacking German soldiers. Sadly, Oscar succumbed to his wounds and died on the same day he was admitted. 2 years later, on the 24th of September 1919, Oscar Leonard Godley's body was recovered and was then reinterred at the Pont de Achelles British Cemetery, Neep, 3 miles south of the battlefields of the Western Front. Oscar portrayed the Anzac spirit through the bravery in his actions in venturing to the front lines and bringing back injured soldiers. After researching this brave young man's life, I was given the opportunity to walk in the steps of the Anzacs and achieve a greater understanding of the sacrifices so many young Australians made for our country and our allies almost 100 years ago. This experience allowed me to truly honour Oscar Leonard Godley's life. It gave me the opportunity to show some respect by conducting a presentation at his grave. This was beyond doubt a rewarding experience, and further helped me understand the Anzac spirit. Along with those who were remembered, there were many who were forgotten. The Australian Imperial Force was by law a volunteer army, so it becomes somewhat crucial that names were never forgotten or left out, because the deeds the soldiers did were out of pure help. Unlike today, in 1916, there were no bodies brought home to bury, so there were no funerals. So instead, every community built a memorial to honour the men. These men lost their stories along with their lives on the battlefields, as evident in Joseph Crew's story. He was a New South Wales-born young man who is believed to be the first professional soldier to enlist, yet his name was not inscribed in his local community memorial in Mosman. In most cases, they were still remembered by their families. But if the family forgets and refuses to accept the death, it becomes indefinite that he won't remain remembered. In 2009, SBS Australia discovered Joseph Crew's story. His name was finally rectified, and after 90 years they ensured he was never forgotten. He is one of many, and although he has been honoured, there were many who were forgotten, soldiers who never returned home. To those who thought the Anzac spirit meant mateship, having a companion, and helping one another out in times of need and suffering, as Ted Smout, a World War I veteran who enlisted at the age of 18 during September 1915, said in an interview in 2000 at the age of 101, Tetzma experienced the slaughters on the Western Front, and these experiences left an indelible mark on his life, but he believed that the incredible mateship of the Australian diggers was the only thing that got him through the carnage, even after bridging through 3 centuries. As the 100th anniversary of Australia's involvement in World War I approaches, the number of people attending dawn services and showing more commitment to honour the Anzacs increases. This becomes crucial, as age has been rapidly robbing the Australians of the original Anzacs. The man believed to be the last known combat World War I veteran was Claude Chills, who fought in both World Wars and lived to the age of 110. Those who fought rarely talked about war experiences. Thus, it became more difficult to pass on stories, and soon legendary people who achieved influential things become just a memory, just a name engraved in stone, just one of many. To history students such as myself, the Anzacs meant more than just people. The United States Attorney General Robert Kennedy once said, "Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lives of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope. And crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current that can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance." His words reflect the ideal hero every young person seeks within themselves, and that's what the Anzacs were, heroes. A fellow friend, Miss O'Connell, aged 16, who travelled to Europe alongside myself, said, "Through the Premier's Anzac Spirit Tour, I gained a greater appreciation for the sacrifices and courage of the Anzac troops. I learned that the Anzac spirit is not just about bravery, it's about bravery in the face of adversity." We heard stories of Australians who, under heavy gunfire, continued to advance to gain just metres of ground, of Australians who during battle risked their lives to rescue the injured and dying friends in no man's land. It's about the compassion, hearing stories of Australians who cared for their friends and the French people, helping rebuild homes and engaging with the local children. It's about ordinary men and women doing extraordinary things. From a survey I conducted in February 2013, I discovered that although over 85% of South Australian high school students learn about the Anzacs in school history subjects, only 55% think the Anzac spirit should be nurtured and carried further through generations. Students start to become ignorant on thoughts that reflect a darker past, and don't value the lessons that could be learned from history. A response I received to the survey asked, "How are we meant to change when the mistakes of the past are glorified?" Although this is a valid statement, the question of why we even learn history is asked. It is necessary to be aware of the past in order to improve from the negatives. Remembering history is not just about glorifying the negatives, but acknowledging the positives and knowing how our lives were shaped. To answer my research question required an in-depth understanding of the Anzac spirit. This knowledge was acquired through specific research on veterans, through recounted experiences in journals, talking to their family members, and even watching documentaries. Through the research, it can be concluded that age, along with ignorance, misinterpretations, moving forward after a negative past, and thoughts of it being irrelevant in modern society are the key factors robbing Australia of its original Anzac spirit. Even after taking into consideration all the negatives of remembrance, it is still important to nurture this spirit through generations, because being aware of the past allows improvement on the negatives and development of the positives. Many lives were lost, but they were lost in order for us to live the lives we are living today. To acknowledge the Anzacs and continue to show similar traits in today's society is important in nurturing the Anzac spirit. The people who I have researched are just some of many, and if their history can influence us so deeply, then why not acknowledge every individual's life? All of the 61,700 Australians who died and the 155,000 wounded in World War I. This to me is why the Anzac spirit should be nurtured.